Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depending on what time you are watching this podcast, we call it Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. I am pleased, I am honored to have back in our space, this space we call City Church of Sacramento on the corner of 4th Avenue and 39th Street. Lee Pringle, the founder and artistic director of the Colourful Music Festival. Lee, welcome back.
Thank you, Pastor, and I'm delighted to be back.
So you left South Carolina. There was a hurricane going on. Now you're here, and it's beautiful weather. That says something about California.
This is why California is known as the largest state in the union. Everybody wants to be here.
I tell people that, too. It's like, oh, well, what about this state? What about that state? I think I like California.
Well, the only thing California is not good at is... I would say we have this saying back, as California goes, so does the rest of the nation. Mm-hmm. We need California to help with those hurricanes on the East Coast.
We have earthquakes, so we have our...
and fires.
And pick your poison, that's right. Again, as I like to joke, but not joke, our Cracker Jack team of research investigators, that would be me, pulled off of the Color of Music website. Just again, by way of introduction, Lee Pringle is a visionary leader with a bold depth of field and admired among his peers for accomplishing the unimaginable for many players and patrons in the classical music world. I'll stop right there. Again, for those that didn't, and you were in our space November 4th of last year, for those that haven't seen that podcast, share something about what the color of music is, and that's a pretty bodacious statement. Mm-hmm. Not that I disagree, mm-hmm. but it is a strong statement. Accomplishing the unimaginable for many players and patrons in the classical music world.
Well, let me just say I have a great publicist. Give a shout out to Allison Savage back in Chapel Hill, now Newborn, North Carolina. She's in retirement with her husband. Those words were carefully chosen, and they were carefully chosen because there is currently 2 other organizations in the U.S. whose mission is to give people of conservatory trained backgrounds a platform to perform. I think the oldest, if I'm not mistaken, is the Gateways Festival at the Eastman School of Music, started in North Carolina by a woman named Amenta, and I forgive Amenta for forgetting her last name, but she became piano professor at Eastman School of Music and brought the festival there. And now the college has embraced it, and they are intricately connected. A gentleman by the name of Lee Kuntz runs that festival, and they have done some remarkable things in the past 4 years under his leadership.
How many years?
I think it's been around 27 years. I could be wrong.
The Color of Music has been?
9 years this October.
Congratulations.
October 21st actually will be the 9th year. But I use Gateways as an example, and the other organization is the Sphinx organization out of Detroit, and they are known for adjudication competitions as well as a conference. And they also have some exported products, their string virtuosi, which many of my musicians have been a part of that, and the Gateway Festival. So I say that there's 3 that has a mission. What makes the Color Music Festival different is our mission is strictly to create opportunities for those artists to perform. And we have been lucky to do that now on the West Coast. It'll be twice this November. As far north on the East Coast as Pittsburgh. We've done the Mid-Atlantic, Richmond, Washington, D.C. We've gone as far west in the middle of the country as Houston, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Nashville, and we've done Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, our home base is Charleston, South Carolina, where I often say it's the cradle of where Black importation of Africans that came to the continent of North America came through. So Charleston has a unique place in American history, but it has a unique place in that some of the first Baroque compositions were performed there because it was one of the original 13 colonies. And if I'm not mistaken, one of Amadeus Mozart's first symphonies, I may have this wrong, was performed in Charleston under the auspices of an organization that was a precursor to the Charleston Symphony. And I'm just slipping, my memory's slipping what the name of that organization was. But yeah, so we have some history there.
So I guess it's depending on which side of the coin you're looking at, good news, bad news. The good news is color of music exists. The bad news is there aren't any other or very few other color of music festivals or organizations.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I would say the classical art form, the orchestral, chamber, piano, etc., that art form is so specialized. And depending on the delivery of those artists, the level of the deliverables of those artists, it's a very difficult thing to make exportable. Again, what differentiates us is we take that art form anywhere that someone's willing to stroke a check to present it. And we've honed in a model that is pretty efficient over the past 9 years that allows us to literally come into a town and do turnkey presentations. All the logistical aspects of what a domicile entity will do in a particular city, we have made those opportunities available by packing up our stuff, leaving Charleston and going to another city and then going back home. Because the classical world is such a niche and expensive world to present, be it opera, ballet, and of course the world that I'm in, because the United States, unlike Europe, does not have a state-run organization for the arts in the sense of every city has a symphonic hall, every city has an orchestra that gets paid by the state, being the country. You know, because we were the part of the colonization that decided we were going to do our own thing over here, you know, based on taxation and some other things in American history, we had to create our own institutions. So the institutions were created not by Black people. They were created by the people who colonized my ancestors. So that means everything that is considered to be the foundation of classical arts in the United States is still a white, male, European, canon-focused set of organizations. The League of American Orchestras, they work hard to diversify that, and I can say, giving credit to a lot of the corporate city orchestras and regional orchestras, are doing more post-George Floyd to increase Black visibility, composers, if not musicians, on stage.
Composers and musicians. So someone would, you would get, someone would have pieces presented from spot to spot, not necessarily people of color actually presenting the pieces.
For example, a friend of mine just sent me something. I'm gonna give him a shout out because we were in Houston, and you know the Houston Symphony has had a huge history of supporting Black artists. They have an event that's coming up where my friend sent me a flyer where they're going to be highlighting 3 Black composers, including Jimi Hendrix. And I think the new term, it's a derogatory term for some, but it's a celebrated term for others, and that is woke entities. I think the George Floyd incident in 2020 shook not only the conscience of the US, but globally. The focus of the lack of representation for people of color, particularly African Americans, in just about every genre that we have. President Barack Obama was, we hope, not the last. Vice President Kamala Harris, we hope, will not be the last vice president. I'm hoping that there will be a Black female president at some point. But the reality of it is when you have institutions whose foundation is built on accelerating or celebrating the music of the colonial people and the things that made them the elitists that they still view them as, you don't change that overnight. And so it's an uphill battle for us. It's an uphill battle just for us to be in Sacramento, okay? Because we are benchmarked against festivals that have funding, corporate funding, to take festivals around. The city can do some, but they can't do all. But for the city of Sacramento and Visit Sacramento to do this heavy lifting, it's going to take community to bring a color of music to the fore on an annual basis. The city can just do so much with the resources that they have.
You recently, I'm assuming very successfully, concluded a festival in New York, Carnegie Hall.
Well, it was 2 performances at Carnegie Hall in honor of Juneteenth.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a festival per se. No. It was
special events.
Special events. How did that go? How was that received?
It was wonderful. In fact, the CUNY Graduate Center hosted us at the Alabash Recitals Hall at the Graduate Center, looking right outside at the Empire State Building, if anybody knows 5th and 34th Street in New York. And that came about as a result of the George Floyd riots of summer of 2020. A young lady by the name of Ariana, who works in the Graduate Center, was just checking to see what they could do to enhance their diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ran across color music. Contacted me out of the blue. So we partnered with them before our Carnegie Hall debut to actually have a performance at the Graduate Center. Wow. And then for Juneteenth, we had a performance at Carnegie Hall at their Zankel Performance Hall, which is a part of the whole Carnegie Hall complex. And it was a highlight on many reasons. I mean, we had people, I don't know if the words hollering and hooping is what you typically don't hear at an orchestral performance, but the moment my octet, which is my 8-member chamber group, entered the hall, people were in the rafters, hooping and hollering, and I thought, okay, yeah, we've made a debut now.
So are you returning to New York?
Yes, in fact, the CUNY Graduate Center, for folks that don't know CUNY, in New York, there's CUNY and then there's SUNY. CUNY stands for City University of New York. Okay. It's the largest educational institution in the state. And some of the luminaries include everybody from Colin Powell to Shirley Chisholm, Don Lemon. I can go on and on. These are CUNY. I think the current mayor of New York is a CUNY graduate. Okay. But they have 25 campuses. And we're formulating, literally as I'm doing this podcast, we're formulating a plan to do something at the Medgar Eggers campus first, Brooklyn College, and then there's several other campuses where they have performance halls that we're working on taking colored music to the CUNY system in 2023.
If you were to, question I hadn't anticipated asking, but if you were to, that's New York. February, you're going to San Francisco. We'll get to Sacramento in a minute. What's the ROI, the return on the investment, not financially, and I'm not even sure what metric to use, but what's the ROI in metropolitan areas like San Francisco, New York, Atlanta, Houston, versus Sacramento, Tulsa, St. Louis, those types of places? What is there? Do you approach it differently? Do you see it differently? Do you see, besides just population difference, I guess implied in my questioning even is, do you have a preference?
Well, let me just say this. Every time we have the opportunity to be seen, I consider it a win. The mere fact that a young child may have the opportunity to see not only a Lee Pringle as the head of an arts institution that is dominated by white people still, but if that child, boy or girl, can see themselves in that art form, being it a violinist, a pianist, an oboe, or a singer, or an organist, then I think that we have accomplished something, because music education, giving a shout out to all those educators out there who teach music, all those piano teachers and the ones who have violin studios, Suzuki studios. Scientific studies have shown a child who immerses themselves in music do better academically, in particular math and sciences. It teaches a child all the things that a parent wants them to be able to do. That is to focus on something with very little supervision. Generally, a child who learns music get one 35-minute class a week. Parents sit outside or sit outside the door, and then they have to go home and they have to practice. So what I want the audience to understand is the caliber of artists that I bring to the stage who go on to get a master's or a doctorate in musical arts. That person has put time in it starting around 4, 5, and then for some, in orchestra in middle school. But that practicing, even once they get the degrees, for each performance, they put an enormous amount of rehearsal time to be prepared when they get on the stage to be their very best. And the solo artists put even more time. For example, you know my friend Anyango Yarborough Davenport, the violinist. Just to give an example for a violin concerto, if I say, I would love to do this concerto, we're gonna do it in such a time, how much time do you need? The average person will say, I want 6 months to be able to do it from memory. So when you come to the hall and you see them come out after curtain call and the conductor takes the podium, they have put 6 months every day for 6 months.
Preparation.
Preparing for that piece. So they deserve to be paid for that time. And when you hear people throw out the words virtuosi or virtuosist, this is something that I want, particularly my community, to understand. We do the things we do, we charge a fee because we have to pay the musicians for their time. If there's anything that I think makes it difficult for all classical artists, white, black, Italian, Asian, it doesn't matter, is paying them for their service, paying them on time, and paying them what they're worth. Because when pledges pull out and people don't follow through, it has a reverberating effect on the organizations that are just trying to give the artists the platform. And it's not easy.
I would dare say it has a reverberating effect on potential artisans. Oh, wow, this is how you're treated. You really have to have a side hustle in order to
make a living.
To do the thing I really want to, I really love
the
to
passion.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is something, early on we struggled with pledges not coming through. And I'll just be honest with the audience. It's not absent here in Sacramento. I mean, last year we had people that made pledges, didn't come through. But working with the city and Visit Sacramento, we made things work. It is unfortunately more of the norm in the arts world. I would say that the Philharmonic, which is a huge institution here in Sacramento, who, by the way, because we like to support other sister organizations doing what we do, their opening night is on the 19th of November, although we're here the 15th through the 18th, the Sacramento Philharmonic will have their opening night that Saturday at the Safe Credit Union Performing Arts. So shout out to the Philharmonic. I know some of the artists that perform there. What we need in this country is our lawmakers, our state legislative people to understand this would be a boring world without the arts. And the arts need to be elevated at the same importance as sports. If you think about how many young guys and gals that do well in soccer and football and volleyball, how many of them actually become professional players? But there is a vast difference in how many violinists, pianists, and other classical instruments that these folks go on to be professional artists, be it working on a cruise ship or working,
Teaching in a college.
Teaching in college, having a studio in the local community that teaches, little Joey and Susie, an art form that hopefully will take them into adult life and the enjoyment of music.
As the research team was doing a little investigation, found out that you, Mr. Pringle, vocally matured into an accomplished tenor. Again, whoever's writing your material is, if you're writing it, boy, oh boy. But if someone else is writing it, they like the color of music and they like you.
Well, let me just say.
Unpack that. You accomplished tenor, you.
Well, let me just say this. I performed in 2 color music festivals in Charleston. One was Amadeus Mozart's Requiem. The second was Giuseppe Verdi's Requiem. And I actually cut my teeth, like most Black Southern boys and girls, singing in the church.
I was going to say church choir.
In the church. So in the AME church, it's called the Sunbeam Choir. I often share the story that I have a brother who's older than me, almost 4 years, and I wanted to do everything my brother did, which annoyed him to no ends. And when I saw him singing in the Sunbeam Choir, I just had to be up there. All I literally was doing was clapping and looking at all the big kids. But I had a high school music educator by the name of Mildred Gilmore Brevard. She was Miss South Carolina State College queen in the 60s and was glamorous, beautiful. I always say she was our version of a Jane Kennedy back in the 70s. And she had all the little Black boys with big crushes on her. But she was like all the Black educators that I had growing up. Did not tolerate, I guess the term...
Nonsense.
And ran a very strict class. And the words of pervasiveness of mediocrity didn't exist for her. She expected the best, and the boys and girls came into her class wanting to do the best. So my fundamentals of music, I got that from Mildred Gilmore Brevard, and of course having opportunities to sing in my church. And later in life, taking vocal training in Charleston, following up those with vocal lessons, and singing in the symphony chorus, singing in the Charleston Men's Chorus when I was much younger. And I can hold a tune now, but you know, I say after the Verdi Requiem in 2014, it is too much to produce a festival and sing in a festival because I'm a stickler about rehearsal time. And I can't put that kind of time in rehearsing, but I have a community choir I sing in, keeps me grounded. Although I have a plethora of professional people that I work with, you know, about 7 times a year, my community folks, it is, you know, the head of the URSA board and, you know, a retired educator here and a retired military post office guy there. And they're not always doing their rehearsing before they come to rehearsal. So I'm cracking the whip with the community choir.
Well, let me focus here now on Sacramento. You're coming back. Thank you very much. I, on a personal level, just really appreciate the opportunity to have a festival of this caliber coming to Sacramento. As I understand the story, again, I encourage folks to look at the November 4th of last year podcast to get the background on how the Color of Music Festival came to Sacramento. But Larry Carr was a retired council member, was very instrumental in seeing that this festival came to Sacramento. You returned to Sacramento, and I guess it just begs the question, did we host well? I mean, you're back, either that
did you host well?
Or did we, or did you get fooled, bamboozled?
Well, let me just say, Sacramento, unlike all the other wonderful cities that I have mentioned, knocked it out of the ballpark. Nowhere have we gone and we have sold out 3 consecutive performances. And for the historic building, I think was built in the 30s, Memorial Auditorium, I was shocked when I came out to address the audience to see how many people showed up in a 2,700 plus, I believe, arena. Beautiful building. Mm-hmm. But I think because where your historic city church is located, this community is the epitome of diversity and appreciating the uniqueness of a land where there were Native Americans and people of Mexican heritage. This was their land,
correct.
Okay? And to be in this building. The audience can't see these extraordinary detailed beams and just all the wonderful things that you've done to maintain this original building. There's a modern sanctuary that we're excited to be performing in during the festival. But I think that the Oak Park community is, for me, a prototype for a lot of cities around the country to come and see what you can do when you invest in neighborhoods that are affordable, that literally have a living, breathing set of edifices throughout the walking district. And, the St. Hope Foundation opened their doors for us to be a part of the Guild Theater, the Underground Bookstore, Fixin's, the restaurant where you and I had dinner last night, among many things that I think that Sacramento has a very unique positioning. Not to minimize, and I want to give them credit. The visionary people in City Hall, Larry Carr being the one that sight unseen vouched for me and my organization, and no one had ever seen the color of music. I mean, think about that. An institution who had a reputation for doing decent, well-executed presentations, a gentleman who, through family friends and his first wife, who he's very good friends with, she told him, I was in Houston. This guy is everything that he says he's going to give you. I would do it in Sacramento. I think Sacramento would be wonderful. And so Rick Jennings, City Council member Rick Jennings, and I'll say the St. Hope CEO, Cassandra Jennings, they are married, yeah. But they do run two different foundations, but Cassandra's just amazing with her notoriety in the city for just being a top-notch executive. Rick, of course, former NFL player who runs Fathers and Family Foundation in the areas.
Del Paso Heights.
Yeah, Del Paso Heights. Yeah. These are all folks that have gotten behind us and supported us, and I'm just grateful to them. Mike Testa at Visit Sacramento, again, someone who had not seen the product, but understood that this would add to the cultural fiber of the city and the festivals. Sacramento Bee just had an article yesterday.
On the color of music?
No, it was on Sacramento being the city of festivals, and that there was $1.5 million allocated to contribute to attracting more festivals to the city. And the more people come and see this area, which is what Mike Testa's office responsibility, he and Sonia Bradley, who have been lockstep helping us throughout these events, it makes Sacramento a place that people want to come to. Folks don't usually go to capital cities easily.
Well, as I joke, but not, I said, if someone says, I want to go and vacation in Sacramento, they've probably never been to Sacramento. That's not something that would roll off of your tongue. But once you're here, there's something that tends to happen. Mm-hmm. It's an outstanding place to grow, to raise a family, mm-hmm. to put down roots. Recreate, we're working on that.
Getting there.
We're getting there. We're working on that. What would you say about us, be it Oak Park, Sacramento, from an outsider now coming in? What don't we know about ourselves?
That's a very good question, because when I was driving here from downtown and I made a left, folks who know the area, on Broadway, Broadway has a feel for me. And my videographer captured it last year. We used some drones to kind of give an overview of what Oak Park is, because the average person riding their bikes or walking, they're seeing the first level, mm-hmm. as opposed to seeing Oak Park elevated, mm-hmm. and the drone showing not only the California palms, which is so iconic of the state of California, but just the community as a whole. So when I come down Broadway, I always go, wow, what a beautiful community. And it just feels good when you're coming through and you see the shops and all the small businesses, which is the the meat and potatoes of any community. Small businesses, support your small businesses, folks. Small businesses, they keep cities alive, not the big box stores, okay? Nothing wrong with them, but it's the small businesses. And when you see a thriving small business community, you know you are in a city or a suburb or community that is alive.
So let me get my dates right. November 15th to the 18th. You're going to be coming here. I think it was, you have 6 performances.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 performances and 1, what's the word I'm looking for?
Literary and a panel on a composer called Edmund Thornton Jenkins. He's the father of Black classical music from Charleston, South Carolina. Went to the Avery Normal School in Charleston, which is now the Avery Research Center at the College of Charleston. And he went to Morehouse College in Atlanta. He was the first Glee Club accompanist. So many people, there's some Morehouse alums I know that live here, because I know a couple of them. And so he went on to the Royal Conservatory in London, where he met Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who will be doing a piece by Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and Robert Nathaniel Dett. For all the choral people out there that went to historically Black colleges, they know of his Listen to the Lambs, his Ordering of Moses, which was our first composition that we performed in 2013 when we started. So I am excited that an entire program around Edmund Thornton Jenkins will be right here.
That's awesome.
At City Church with the Color Music Chamber Orchestra under the baton of Maestro Julius P. Williams, who is our Dean of Black Conductors. He's been around. He's at Berkeley in Boston, Berkeley Conservatory in Boston, teaches orchestra and composition there.
In addition to what you just unpacked, what's new and exciting that we will experience this go-round that we didn't have last year? What's encourage us to go out and get our tickets, besides the fact that we had 3 sold-out performances last year. So, do go out and purchase your tickets.
Yeah. I would say what I am most excited about is the fact that the pipe organ, which was the anchor and cornerstone for the historically Black colleges before access to string instruments, will be presented again. We haven't presented an organ recital since 2018.
Wow.
At Houston, at the University of Houston's Organ Recital Hall. And your beautiful church has an organ that was installed by a gentleman by the name of Scott Nelson,
Correct.
who is the organist at All Saints Episcopal Church.
Correct.
And we will do a piece with strings under the leadership of Anyango Yarborough Davenport on Wednesday, the 16th. And the next day, we'll be doing the Edmund Thornton Jenkins concert, 4 of his compositions, one of which requires organ, 2 actually, that requires organ. So that's what I think is very unique. And for those who are not familiar with the fact that just about every large Black church prior to the multiple denominations that have become spinoffs, the organ, the pipe organ, was the classical instrument in the church.
I thought it was the Hammond.
It's become that.
I'm just kidding.
And a chord keyboard, the Hammond B3, with the Leslie, to be exact.
Must have the Leslie.
Must have the Leslie.
Yeah.
But I jokingly say that, but at the same time, being a Black classical institution, I think we have a responsibility to make sure the things that are germane to our evolution on this continent, we present it, especially when it's a part of the classical genre.
See, I show my ignorance. I've got 6 decades plus under my belt. I did not realize that the pipe organ was foundational to our worship
Culture.
experience.
Yeah. Well, I say the high church, the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and many churches that were built with organs as their classical instrument as well, still maintain their pipe organs. Unfortunately, in the Black community, not all, but the vast majority of Black communities that now build contemporary spaces, those spaces are not built with a pipe organ. They're built with a different type of praise and worship experience.
Different type of architecture, different
Architecture,
the ceilings are lower. There has to be intentionality. If this is going to be something that we desire to do, you've got to, from the foundation, literally have to grind that in.
Yeah, and I think that what makes the fact that you and your congregation will be hosting us for 2 performances that will have organ. And by the way, there is an organ recital at All Saints Episcopal Church on Friday the 18th. It's our high noon organ recital series. There will be refreshments afterwards. So if you want to take your lunch break and come to organ recital and support Dr. Mickey Terry Thomas from Howard University, I think you would enjoy it. He is a virtuoso organist, historian, master lecturer at Howard University. I hope you will come out and support us. But I think that there is room for not only Black intelligentsia, but the greater community to once again appreciate the organ. Even Memorial Auditorium has a phenomenal organ. And this is a 2,700 seat auditorium. So that tells you when it was built, the pipe organ was a major part of baseball. I mean, you go to some baseball stadiums, you hear the guy playing the organ, and folks don't make that connection that it was the classical instrument that was put in there. And these organs are worth millions of dollars, but they unfortunately get taken out of, sanctuaries because there's no one playing them. And we want to be the entity that comes in and say, hey, an organ for me is a sacred instrument that deserves being preserved. And if the contemporary service is what the congregation is about, leave it for those who want to come in and be a part of the campus in a way. So I'm hoping Color of Music can do an organ recital series that runs throughout the year with the local organ guild here. And I'm saying this for any sponsors who want to sponsor an organ recital series at City Church of Sacramento. Contact me through our website, colorofmusic.org.
I appreciate that. As always is the case, we're running out of time. I know that you've got, and I appreciate you really making space for us because you have to run off to City Hall right after this concludes, and then you'll be flying out, then
tomorrow,
flying back,
yeah.
And it's going to be a whirlwind. In addition to purchasing tickets and praying for a successful festival, anything else you need from Sacramento, from Oak Park, from Sacramento to make this everything it should be?
Bring the children. It's important to expose our children to the classical arts. It makes them a well-rounded citizen. There's more to life than sports. Not that I have anything against sports, but I think when children go to college, whether they go into STEM as opposed to a liberal arts education, understanding the basics of music and an appreciation for music and the fine arts just makes us all better. And, we were talking about the postcard when I came in, and I was at the printer. We had a little issue with it.
Looks beautiful to me.
There's art in everything we do, and even graphic designers or artists. Even the video person who's doing this production is an artist. He has to edit it. He has to do zoom ins. He has to put graphics in it. There's so many things that the arts are connected to. And I just think that if you can bring a child or bring some kids, if you have a youth group, bring them, expose them to this. And we can put together some group tickets for you and would love to see you in the audience.
We will. Thank you for that reminder. Last year, when you presented at the Mondavi, we were able to bring two of the 8 of our Meeks grandkids. And so we're going to do that again, hopefully more than 2, hopefully 5 this time. 3 in Southern California might be a little
hard to
bridge too far. But Lee Pringle, I want to, again, on a personal level, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Ray.
The conversations that we have had, I know what an incredible lift this is personally, organizationally, the financial responsibilities, the commitments. This is no small feat. And the fact that you are, to borrow from Nehemiah biblical reference, you're still on the wall.
Yes.
You're still doing what you've been called to do. I appreciate it. Again, this space is called Race, Culture, and the Church. And I think we've hit all three circles on this Venn diagram today. So thank you, Lee,
Thank
so
you,
much.
Pastor. Thank you for having me.